If you've never heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and I'll explain really quickly. My favorite part, it's free. There's actually creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer if you want. It will actually distribute your podcast so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many more, and you can actually make money from it without any minimum numbers of listeners, and it's everything that you need to actually make a podcast in one place. So do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. In today's episode, you'll learn about Ken Mr. Biz Wentworth and his journey into entrepreneurships, and really how he used a lot of the lessons working in the corporate world to get him to where he is today. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and we will chat right after. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Mendoza, and I've got a very special guest today. His name is Ken Wentworth, and he also goes by Mr. Biz. And I'm going to go ahead and let him give us a little introduction about himself.
Hey, Jordan, thanks for having me on. Yeah, excited to be here. Yeah, a brief intro. I worked, let's just say 20 plus years without dating myself too much in the corporate world. At JP Morgan Chase, and I was able to get into the top 3% of that company, Fortune 15 company, before I decided I was going to blaze my own trail and start my own business, and didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And so I have been forced to, no pun intended, blaze my own trail as I've sort of figured this out and gone down the entrepreneurial path, and ended up, getting in a few different partnerships now and opening a few different types of businesses. So it's been a really cool journey, and I absolutely love what I do. And I think that's probably a brief of an intro as I can give for the long career I've had. But I should mention. So now I'm an on-demand CFO, fractional CFO. So I help small business owners with their business and help them operate more profitably, more efficiently in their business.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that info, and definitely give some more insights into you. So you mentioned that you were in the corporate world. So before the corporate world, where did you go to school?
I went to school at a small private school here in Ohio, actually here in Columbus, Ohio, Capital University. And then I did my my postgraduate, my master's. I went to Regis University. So my undergrad's in my undergrad's in accounting, but I'm thankful for my background in accounting, but I absolutely hate accounting. I figured out pretty quickly it's just too much in the weeds for me. I'm a big blue sky type of person, and very strategic, and that nitty gritty of accounting was just a little bit too much for me. So, but it's actually absolutely helped give me a great base and foundation for what I do. As a matter of fact, I should mention, even though I don't like accounting, I got some really good advice. I had an internship, which, if you are going to school, I would strongly suggest get as much experience as you can, because this advice I received as an intern has absolutely been critical to the success I've had in my career. And that is, I was a business administration major. And the reason I was originally is because I knew I wanted to do something in business, but I didn't know exactly what. So I thought, man, business administration would be perfect, right? I'll learn a little bit about several different aspects of business. The guy I interned with, who I had a lot of respect for, highly educated, very intelligent guy, I asked him one day, we were at lunch, and I said, what's some advice you would give me? And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'm not sure, something in business. And he said, you have to change your major. I said, what do you mean? This is going to give me all this great experience. He said, no, it's going to give you terrible experience. And here's why. You're going to get out of school, and what are you going to get a job in? You're going to have a little bit of accounting, but not enough to get a job in accounting. You're going to have a little bit of marketing, but, et cetera, et cetera. He's like, you're going to be a jack of all trades, master of none. And this is what he said, and this will definitely date the conversation, but he said, you'll be a manager at Payless Shoes. You have a college degree and you'll be a manager at Payless Shoes. He's like, that's not going to get you where you want. He said, if you know you want to do something in business, go the accounting route, because that'll give you a really strong foundation and a base of knowledge that you can apply no matter what you want to do in business. Having that penchant for numbers and having that skill set will help you no matter what you want to do in the business world. And it turns out that was like maybe some of the best career advice I had ever received, because as I look back, if I would have continued in business administration, I may have followed that path and been a manager at Payless Shoes, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I wanted for my career. So I should mention that as a sort of a backdrop, is, that's really, really important. If you are going to go to college, before you go the entrepreneur route, make sure you get a good base. Think ahead and think of what you want to do, and think of what, don't think of the immediacy. Because again, I looked at it and said, I know I don't want to work in accounting my whole career. It doesn't matter. It's going to help me down the way.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's definitely really, really great advice to get that foundation. I think most entrepreneurs, when they start, they think about, how can I get the money, but then they don't know what to do with it when they have it, right? So I think that's definitely some really, really great advice. So I know we talked off air, and you had mentioned that you played basketball. So can you tell me a little bit about that? How was that playing in college, and what position did you play?
Yeah, so I loved it. I mean, I've always been very athletically inclined, and I was a guard, mostly off guard, but I absolutely loved it. And that's another thing that helped shape the foundation for a lot of what I think has made me successful as athletics, is not just being, again, I was never fantastic, or I went to a Division III school and all that kind of stuff, so nothing, major, nothing to write home about per se. But I think, and this is what we encourage, we've got 3 daughters, and encouraging them to be involved in activities like that, because you learn so much more than just how to shoot a free throw and and how to attack a 2-3 zone. It's, you learn so much about teamwork and about loyalty and character and all those sorts of things that go into being on a team, or even being in an individual sport. The hard work and discipline that's required. And so I think it's really important to really establish those. And I see, you see a lot of parents nowadays pushing their kids in certain directions. And I say pushing, and I think that's part of the problem too, is, none of our daughters have played basketball, nor will they, I don't think. Because, I don't want to be that parent that says, well, I played basketball, so you should too. So I didn't start handing them a basketball when they were 3, saying, hey, let's go play basketball. Of course, I would have loved it if they did, but, they need to forge their own path. But just having that path and being involved in athletics and on a team, so important. Again, I feel like there's so many life lessons that I learned, along the way in athletics. And I've been continued to be athletically involved as I've gotten into my adult life, and competed in the powerlifting world, and I was able to use some of those things I learned playing basketball and things like that I mentioned. Having that discipline and that perseverance, I call it consistent perseverance. If you use consistent perseverance, you're going to be successful no matter what endeavor you choose. And so I've been fortunate enough, even in the powerlifting world. I mean, I've broken 6 world records, which is a lot of times is a conversation piece with folks, because they're like, what the heck? What are you talking about? But, I think those things are really important. And sometimes parents nowadays, it seems that they're so focused on their kids of, hey, I'm going to send my kid and really push them to play fill in the blank sport. And they're going to get a college scholarship, and they're going to play professionally. And, as we all know, the percentage of kids that play, even collegiately, that are going to play, professionally in whatever chosen sport they have, it's such a small infinitesimal amount. That's not the path to go. Even college scholarships are very hard to come by. I mean, it's so competitive. But think of the things that your child is going to learn. Like I mentioned, some of those things of character and work ethic and discipline and loyalty and teamwork. I mean, those are the things that are going to carry them in the entrepreneurial world or in the corporate world. It doesn't matter either way. You're going to need those things, and if you can do those well. I know when I was in the corporate world, I would hire. I mean, I would give preference to people who I know played sports in college, especially because, number one, I know they know time management, because that's a huge challenge of playing athletically in college while balancing, your college coursework and whatnot. And then again, all those other things and intangibles I just mentioned. I mean, I know that they're going to be strong in those characteristics, and those are typically characteristics of someone who's going to be successful.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think that sports and business, they really coincide with each other. You for all the things that you mentioned, and then you go to something like mindset, right? Like they've already have a strong mindset, right? And they can have that translate to the business world, especially if they get into a role like sales, where sales is all about mindset, because especially if you're doing something like cold calling, you have to have the ability to let the no's just kind of roll off and move on to the next prospect, right? So
Right.
yeah, so my oldest is 15, and he played freshman football this year. I didn't play football in high school, and he wanted to play, so I was like, cool, let's do this. Let's go ahead and have him play. And you mentioned a lot about character and teamwork and all those things, and it was really interesting to kind of see him at the high school level learn some of those things, right? Because as a parent, you try to talk to your kids, and sometimes, having 3 kids, they listen to some things, right? But they don't always listen to everything. So it's nice when they get to be around a framework and a system like that gives them these skills, and you start to actually see them implement them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the things we preach along the way is, whatever activity you're going to do, we're going to do it full bore. I mean, there's no half in. We're either all in or we're not in at all. And as an example, so our oldest is 19, and I remember when she was in middle school, she wanted to run track, and I ran track through high school, and so she wanted to do the high jump. Well, I remember kind of dabbling in the high jump in middle school or something like that, but I never did it in competition. I think maybe once or twice, but certainly not a skill set that I was comfortable with and knew well. And I said, okay, she did her first meet and did terribly, and she was upset about it, and she wanted to get better. And so she and I sat down over a weekend and watched like 9,000 YouTube videos on high jumping. And her coach wasn't particularly adept at coaching high jump either. So, and then she and I went out over the weekend. We'd watch a bunch of YouTube videos, take notes, and then go out to the track and practice. And then we come back and, okay, what well, what didn't go well, sort of troubleshoot, and then find videos. Okay, the plant foot, what should we be doing with the plant foot? Really breaking down, the high jump, and and trying to show her that that's the example. If that's what you're going to do, we're all in. We're going to do this. We're going to figure it out. And again, there are going to be bumps along the way, but you're going to have to, blaze your own trail, as you say, to be successful. And it wasn't just about the high jump in that situation, Jordan. It was, again, as you mentioned, teaching her, like, when you get into a new endeavor, that's what you need to do. You need to learn, and you need to, model yourself after someone who's already been successful in that area. I'm not saying copy someone, but if someone has already blazed their own trail, right, and been successful in whatever you're trying to do, in this example, the high jump, why not take advantage of that and learn from them and help make your trail a little bit less cumbersome, perhaps. But teaching that, through sports, that's what's going to take. Now that she's going to Ohio State University right now, and she's on an MD PhD path in neuroscience, of all things. Like, I'm a numbers nerd and she's a science person, right? clearly a lot of differences there, but now she's there and I see some of these things, and one of my, she's been a fantastic daughter and had a lot of accomplishments. And I'll tell you, one of the things that, at least at this stage of her life, that she's accomplished and completed, that's been probably my most proudest moment as a father, is when she was a junior in high school. She decided she wanted to graduate early, and she had this plan all along, but she wanted to graduate high school early. And her senior year, she wanted to go to college. Her senior year in high school, she wanted to already begin college. And there was a pathway to do that at a local community college, which was close to her high school. And she said, well, look, I'm going to be going to a large school for neuroscience after I get out of high school. I don't want to have a community college. I don't know if it's going to transfer. So she said, I want to go to Ohio State. We live here in Columbus, Ohio. And her guidance counselor, who'd been a guidance counselor for 30 years, said, yeah, well, you really can't do that, but you can go to this community college. You can go there full time, blah blah blah. Well, on her own, she didn't take no for an answer, and she went and figured it out. And she came downstairs one day without telling me or her mom or anyone. And she came downstairs and she said, Dad, I think I figured out a way that I can go to Ohio State full time my senior year of high school. Let me show you what I found. And by golly, she was right. And she had to go back to her guidance counselor, who had been a guidance counselor for 30 years, and tell him, hey, for future students, the answer isn't no. This is how you can do this. And so, during her senior year of high school, she was driving down, commuting to Ohio State and going full time as a full-time student at Ohio State University at 17 years old. Not, and I don't say that to brag that, oh my gosh, she's so smart. She did. It was the perseverance that she used, that she didn't take no for an answer. And she, on her own, without me telling her, without me encouraging her, said, by golly, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I know there has to be a way I can do this. And she figured it out. And so those types of things, it was a really proud parenting moment to say, man, we have instilled some really strong things in her that she would figure that out and think to do that on her own.
No, yeah, that's absolutely grit, right? Determination. You definitely should be proud of that. And honestly, I would brag about that. I would tell everybody about that, right? Because I mean, those are some of the things, some of the values that you were trying to, through sports and through just conversations, trying to instill. And then you get to see that come to fruition down the road. I mean, yeah, you should absolutely be proud of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's talk about the corporate world now. So you finished up school, you had 2 stops, and then you got into the corporate world. So what was your first role? And if you can recall, what was your first corporate role and what was that first day like?
My first corporate role was in accounting. I did work in accounting for a couple of years to start my career because, again, that's what I had gone to school for. And because I had been immersed into it, I'm like, well, I should probably give this a shot. But the first day was, I guess in a word, I would say overwhelming. As they say, there's things they just don't teach you in school. And just simple things about, I had the internship, but it was a completely different experience than going into the corporate world and figuring things out and, trying to assess, constantly assessing during the day. Am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? Am I, so it was overwhelming for sure. No doubt about that.
Okay. And so how many roles did you have in the corporate world prior to deciding, you know what, I want to blaze my own trail. I want to do my own thing. I want to start my own business?
Oh my gosh. Heck, I don't even know. I mean, a whole bunch. So the thing that was great for me, and this was this was a purposeful decision, I should say. When I was coming out of school, I had offers from a couple of different companies, and I wanted to choose the company, frankly, that was the largest and had the most breadth. So, I grew up in a small town that was a steel mill town. I was the first person in my family that went to college because in our steel mill town, you graduate from high school, you got a job in the steel mill, you work there for, whatever, 30 plus years, you retired with a nice pension, et cetera. And all was good in the world. And so that was the, sort of the normal career path of people that, grew up where I did. And so leaving and going to college, I was thinking, into the future. And again, I say this all the time, but I'm strategic to a fault. And what I mean by that is I'm thinking 3, 5, 10 years out. In the meantime, it's to a fault because I trip over the curb that's right in front of me. But coming out of college, I was thinking, what company has the most opportunity that I could be there and stay there? I didn't want to have to job hop around. I wanted to be able to stay be at a place where I could be loyal. They would be loyal to me, and I could, have a long career. And in my mind, and being slightly naive back then, of course, I was thinking, geez, I want to find a company that I could go and be there for 30 years and retire, or 40 years or whatever it takes and retire. And so that's why I chose where I did and went to, at the time it was Bank One and became JP Morgan Chase. So it allowed me and enabled me the opportunities, a boundless opportunities to do different things. I mean, I went from accounting, I became a financial analyst, then a senior analyst, then a finance manager for different groups, and then a CFO for, I couldn't even tell you how many different businesses under the JP Morgan umbrella. I worked in an operations group. I was a CFO for the group. Actually, this is pre-CFO days. I was a finance manager in a group. And their head of operations left, and the head of the business came to me and said, hey, you know what? I really love it for you to jump into this role. Sounds awesome. Let's do it. And that gave me a bunch of great experience, of course. So, and then came back on the finance side, and again was CFO for several different businesses, learning each and every role you learn different things. And, as I tell people, I mentor people for many, many years now and still mentor folks. And I tell them every job is a good job, even if it's a pain in your butt, even if you don't like it, even if your boss stinks. Here's the thing: you pull from each and every role you have the things you like to do and the things that you don't like to do. So then when you choose your next role, you can choose more wisely. And so I've used that philosophy throughout my career, and it's helped get me closer and closer to what I wanted to be doing and needed to be doing. And that's where I'm at now. I mean, I've been able to, forge this blaze my own path, I should say, to get to this point. But yeah, tons of different roles and a lot of different things. And frankly, it's set me up to be able to do what I do now because I've had so much broad experience in so many different areas that allows me to, when I'm working with a business owner, really help in a lot of different ways. I mean, I've hired, I don't know, and interviewed, well, definitely hundreds, if not into the thousands of people over the years of my corporate career. So, I've gotten, as anything, any task or any skill, the more you do it, you become better and better, hopefully, right? And so, for example, I had a business owner that she had fired 3 COOs in a 9-month period. And I happened to pop by her office. I just was in the neighborhood and popped by and said, hey, she said, oh, you caught me. I'm in the middle of interviews. And I checked my calendar. And I said, do you mind if I sit in and interview? And she said, why is that? I said, well, I'll be honest with you. I don't think you're a very good picker because you're 0 for 3 in the last 9 months. So at least allow me to be part of this, and I can give you another opinion. But that's an, she said, CFOs do that. I said, well, this one does. So, and that drives from my experience I had in the corporate world and having all those different roles and hiring and interviewing and all those different types of roles has been able to, help me, develop those skill sets and everything. So, my career at JP Morgan was fantastic. I mean, nothing bad to say about that company whatsoever. They treated me very well. They compensated me well. And then, when I left, they treated me very well. And I still have, tons and tons of friends there, and I still own a lot of stock. So I hope they keep going really well.
That's awesome. And really, to me, what it sounds like is, every role that you had in the corporate world, and again, whether you enjoyed all of the process and all the intricacies of it, you really picked all the things that you enjoyed, turned those into skill sets, and then you've taken all of the years of experience, and now you translate that into exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, for example, my very first job, I know you had asked about that earlier. My very first job out, I had what, looking back now, was the worst boss I've ever had in my entire career. She was absolutely terrible. And I got to the point where I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave the company. And my uncle, I had a conversation with him, and he said, you can't do that. You cannot let one person drive you out of a fantastic company. Basically gave me the suck it up buttercup speech. And he told me then, he said, use it as an opportunity. You see how she treats people and how she is not a good boss. Keep those in mind for when you become a boss. So you learn what not to do as a boss, right? What are the things that she does that make her a terrible boss? Don't do those when you become a boss, right? And so oddly enough, it was a terrible experience. And in some ways it was a very good experience because, again, I was able to draw from that and figure out, and a lot of it was EQ type things, emotional quotient type things, of, just how you treat people and the things that you say and the impact it has on people. I think it helped me tremendously as I got, a few years along further in my career and began managing people. I know that it helped me tremendously, having that experience of having a really, really bad boss right out of college, oddly enough, ended up being something that helped mold and shape me, and I think become a stronger leader down the way.
Absolutely. And you brought up EQ, and that's actually something that I get an opportunity to teach an EQ class to use about 15 participants every year. It's part of a 6-month leadership program that I teach, and it's so interesting, especially for people that maybe have heard of the concept but don't actually have a grasp on the different competencies and the boxes of EQ. But it's very interesting to see how easy it is for us as humans to identify someone that has low EQ, right? And
Right.
I mean, there's some very very easy signs to identify. It's, has those micromanaging tendencies where they're constantly worried about you and not themselves, and maybe doesn't realize when they're saying something to somebody that might be rude, all those little things. But, that's the first bucket of it, which is self-awareness, right? It's actually understanding how to manage those emotions and how you show up. And then the second one's self-management. So now that I understand that these emotions are happening, now I actually know how to control these. Do I get up and walk away? Do I need to take some deep breaths? What is it? And then, you jump into the social aspects of it, right? How do I show up in social situations? And then how do I manage relationships? And it's so interesting to see participants have this light bulb go off, and they're like, wow, yeah, no, I didn't realize that I did some of these things, right? Because I think that's the one thing about EQ that I enjoy is everybody can build those muscles, right? We all do things that are detrimental to our EQ at certain points of our day, or our week, or a month, or even, in our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's it's super important. And another thing that I think, and it's indirect and a bit tangential, but did tie in is some of the other advice I got, and I would 100% pass this along to people as well. Whether you are in school right now or even out of school, considering additional training and things like that, EQ, massively important. If you don't have EQ, you're not, I promise you, you will not be a good leader. You will not be a good leader without developing and having a high EQ. The best leaders in the world have high EQs 100% every single time. But the other advice that I got from this internship that I had, which again was just amazing, but is he told me, when you're in school, he said, take every communication class you can. So no matter what it is, for your electives, take communication classes, whether it's, presentations and oral, whether it's, written, because that's going to be what separates you in your career. There's a lot of people, you're going to go work with people. There's going to be a ton of people that are really, really smart. The thing that's going to separate you is communication. And then of course that ties in again tangentially to EQ, and not only being able to communicate, but determining how my communication is going to be received on the EQ side. But that advice, and it's funny, is the same sort of thing as, it's almost like getting advice from a parent, to where, when you're a teenager or whatever, and your parents give you advice, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this old man or old lady doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. And then 10 years later, you're like, holy crap, they knew exactly what they were talking about. Here I am in my undergrad taking all these communication classes. I'm up at 2 a.m. working on a presentation I have to give the next day. But then fast forward, I'm 25 years old, and I'm a few years into my corporate career, and all of a sudden my career just absolutely rocket ship takes off. All these people who I had started around the same time or around my age are left in the dust. And the main primary reason was my communication skills, especially in today's day and age with so much communication being via email. That's absolutely hugely important, right? To be able to have strong written communication. Again, as you had mentioned, we all know when we see people who have low EQ, we all know someone, when we get an email and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy or girl even go to school? Like, do they know any grammar or punctuation? And not to be like, the grammar police about it, but you know what I mean? When you get an email that's very poorly written, for me, it distracts me from the message. And so I might not get the message as well. And then the other part is being able to present your ideas. You could be the most intelligent person in the world and in your space, but if you can't articulate those in a way and relate them in a way to your audience, no one will ever know, right? We had a guy, one of my jobs during my career at JP Morgan, I was an investment analyst. And we had a guy who ran one of our mutual funds who went to MIT and was, probably the stereotype of most people think of someone from that goes to MIT, like massively intelligent, probably the most intelligent person I've ever been around. However, his communication skills were terrible. We couldn't take him on client meetings because he was completely incapable of communicating at a quote unquote normal human level. Everything he said, he would lose you 2 sentences in because he's talking about like quantum physics type things, and he's throwing out terminology that no one knows. And so it was, we couldn't take him, even though he's just so intelligent, and we wanted to kind of show him off. we couldn't take him because people would just get completely lost. So that those communication skills, which in my opinion lead to being having a higher EQ and being able to communicate more effectively, are massively important. And it doesn't matter, again, if you're an undergrad, do that, take those classes, because they will pay off for you no matter what you're going to do later in life. But even if you're 25 or 30 or 35, it's never too old, right? You can always teach an old dog new tricks. Is go back if you feel like your communication skills are lacking. Go back, and that's something that will pay dividends for you, I promise, as you go forward in your career, whether it's as a business owner, entrepreneur, or even in the corporate world. It will definitely help you.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And, I feel fortunate, and most people, when they hear the rest of what I'm about to say, wouldn't probably feel fortunate to be able to have this job. But when I was in 8th grade, I had a job where I literally went around to neighborhoods and apartments, and I knocked on people's doors, and I got them to sign up for a newspaper subscription, And so for the younger listeners that are out there, newspapers are, no, I'm just kidding. No, but like I literally, me and my brother and our buddy Steve from down the street, we got hired by the Oregonian newspaper, one of the distributors, and he would take us, give us a neighborhood, drop us off. We would have to go and knock on people's doors. You want to talk about a training ground for communication, right? 14-year-old. I mean, I've heard everything that can come out of a human's mouth when they've been interrupted for dinner. I've heard it. I've heard, anytime, like, please, you just woke my baby up, no soliciting, right? I got to hear all of those things. And I almost quit after day one because it was tough. Like knocking on 100 doors and having everyone tell you no is not a fun night. But one of the things, you mentioned, things that people say to you that show back up 10 years later. So the guy, I'll never forget his name. His name is Jim Franks. And I got back to the little office, the distribution center, and we were settling up, and I didn't sell a single thing. And I was not very excited about it. And I was like hesitant to give my clipboard over because everything was still there, So
right.
He said, "Hey, what happened out there?" I said, "Well, apparently nobody reads the newspaper. I don't know. No one wants to buy anything from me." And he said, "Hey, Jordan, I know you're probably not going to understand this right now, but I want to tell you something, and hopefully one day it'll make sense to you." And I was like, "All right, whatever. What do you got to say?" And he said, "The sale doesn't start until the customer says no." And I said to him, "Yeah, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." And I walked off, right? And I thought about not going back for day 2, but I'm glad that I did because I kept learning. I use that as a training ground for effective communication. I figured out how I can relate the flag that's outside to them when they open the door to break the ice. I learned so many different skill sets that I could do. And then years later, I became a sales trainer, and I had a kid that went out, and you could tell he had that same type of day that I had. And I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, apparently no one wants to buy the product." I was like, "Man, this sounds exactly like me." You know what I said to him? I said, "The sale doesn't start until the customer says no." And then I got it. I got that. We're, as human beings, we're actually wired to say no. I mean, if you think about it, back to our childhood, our parents are like, "Hey, no, don't touch the stove. No, you can't have dessert. No, you can't go outside. Say no to strangers," right? All these different things. And so I think we're actually wired for this. When someone cold calls you, what's your natural instinct? No.
Absolutely no, yeah.
No, I'm going to just say no right off the bat. And so I had to figure out, what do I do? What can I say to someone that will not have them immediately tell me no, right? Or what response can I give them that makes them actually stand there longer to have a conversation? Like, "Hey, I'm not buying anything." "Oh, I'm actually not selling anything. I'm just trying to give you some information," right? Like different things that you can do, because again, it doesn't mean no. It just means like, I'm busy, or I don't really want to talk to you right now, or I don't understand. Or maybe I just said it because this is what I normally say when strangers come knock on my door, right? So so I absolutely agree with that. There's these lessons that we get that really set the foundation for our growth. And so I think that was so spot on.
Yeah, no, and it's funny, and I promise those of you listening, this was not a setup, but literally, one of them, I do a Mr. Biz tip of the week every week, and we send them out on social media and everything. And literally this week, the Mr. Biz tip of the week, I'm not kidding, Jordan, is start with yes. Start with yes, with ideas, with customers, with employees. Change your mindset to begin to think how it can work, not all the ways that it can't work. Because I think that, as you mentioned, that's a mindset. We as you mentioned, as we're growing up, that's what you hear from your parents so often is no, 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 no. So it becomes ingrained in you. And so, even in my corporate career, looking back, and, someone would say, we need to do this project. And they say, well, we can't do that. And literally, we had this one example where, Jamie Dimon, who's still the CEO at JP Morgan Chase, and we had this project, and the guy who was going to be leading the team to do it said, yeah, we can't do that. And I questioned him, because in my vocabulary, can't is another way of saying I won't. And so I wanted to delve into that. Like, well, what do you mean can't? And he said, well, it would take, whatever, 5 of us, or actually when I went on, I said, well, if you went back to your desk right now and your phone rang and it was Jamie Dimon, and he said, Paul, I need you to do this, what would you say? He's like, well, I mean, yeah, we could do it, but it would take 5 of us working 20-hour days for the next week to get this done. And I said, aha, so it can be done. Now, do we want to have 5 people work 20-hour days? No, we don't. But what if we had 5 people work on it for 3 weeks? Is that more reasonable, right? Now we're figuring out how it can be done, not, oh, this is ridiculous, we can't do this, right? And so it sounds like a silly example, but that mindset, begins to proliferate in your career. Again, even if it's on the corporate side or on the entrepreneurial side, because especially as an entrepreneur, I mean, holy crap, if you are faint of heart, being an entrepreneur is not for you. I mean, you are going to get kicked in the head, and no matter how smart you are, no matter how successful you are, you will get kicked in the head a whole bunch. And if you can't, as you did with that job of signing up newspaper subscribers, if you can't get back up and handle no, you will not be successful in the entrepreneur world. And I tell people this all the time: you could have a really good idea and be really smart, but you might be a terrible entrepreneur. I mean, it is, in my opinion, to be a successful entrepreneur, it is 100% about mindset. Give me someone who has the right mindset and has, is average intelligence, or even below average intelligence for that matter. And I'll make them successful. They will be successful, because mindset is way more important, in my opinion, than just sheer intelligence. That mindset, that using that consistent perseverance, as I always say, I think is the absolute key. And you obviously demonstrated that. And I will say a funny note to that is, I too had a job. I was delivering newspapers back in the day, a million years ago. That was my first job when I was 12 years old, is delivering newspapers. So I feel you with that, and especially with some of the younger listeners now, like you said, a newspaper is actually something that you but I can't imagine trying to sell them, especially like you said, going in the evening and things like that, where you're bothering people and things. It was a different time back then.
That's it. Yeah. So you really had to get creative, right? That's where a lot of the creativity comes from, is just thinking about, like, all right, well, I'm out here, so might as well figure out how I can get people to stand at their door for longer than 1 second, So,
Right.
But yeah, it's all about mindset, and what really helped me out is I shifted no from its standard meaning to next opportunity. Right. This person says no, I got a next opportunity next door. Right. And so when you're able to kind of shift things that way, and you can develop that tough skin, then to me, the sky's the limit. Right. Because most people's biggest roadblock is their mind. Right. Is that battle within that tells them that no one's going to want what they're selling, and then, as in sales, if you're not confident about your product, it doesn't matter what your presentation is. It doesn't matter. Like, people can literally smell it on you. And right. So, you have to have that confidence, and you can't be afraid to hear somebody tell you no, right? Because, to me, I love no's, because it's that I'm actually getting closer to the next yes now. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
You just have to shift that. So,
and think about all this. I mean, there's a gazillion examples of this, but think about some of the most successful people, or depending how you define success, but people that are typically seen as being successful. Bill Gates, and I don't remember the exact numbers. I'll probably get it wrong, but as I recall, I think he was told no 53 times when he was trying to pitch Microsoft. Oprah Winfrey was turned down and said, "You'll never work in television." Imagine if those folks would have just said, "Oh crap, okay, well I guess I'm not good at television. I'll just give up." What would have come of Oprah Winfrey if she would have taken that no to heart and just left at that? What would Bill Gates have done if after 52 times he said, "Okay, that's enough. I'm done. This isn't going to work." And again, that consistent perseverance, knowing that you're going to get some bumps in the road, you're going to get bumped, kicked in the head, as I said earlier, and you got to be able to brush it off, get up, brush yourself off, and keep going. Just like tying it back to what we were talking about earlier with sports. I mean, you're not going to go undefeated. You're not going to play every minute of every game, right? There's going to be someone playing ahead of you that you want to play in front of, and you want to get minutes and earn your time on the floor or the court or whatnot, the field. And there's going to be, your team, you're not going to win every game. So how do you respond to that? And I think that's just so, so important. And those are the types of things that I look for. Even when I'm mentoring someone, they say, "Hey, what I'm thinking about, I got a corporate job now, but I really want to do this." And they want to sort of dive into the entrepreneur world. And not to be negative, but I'll tell them, "Hey, you know what? You can do that. But here, I think the skills that you're going to need to develop to be able to be successful in that space." So I don't tell them no and say, "That's a terrible idea. You'll fail." But it's, you flip it around to the positive and say, "Okay, here are the things that I see, at least my own opinion of what you need to develop to be successful." Because again, as I said, I think that is the most important thing in the entrepreneurial space is having that, some of those intangible skills that are just critically important to success.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into, wrapping up here, and just, I want to give people some insights into your show. So you host a radio show called Mr. Biz. Can you give us a little bit of details on that?
Yeah, Mr. Biz Radio. It's as we say, it's biz talk for biz owners. And so what we do is I don't do many solo shows anymore. It's a half hour long, so they're kind of easily digestible. We have guests on who talk about, areas of different areas that would be important to either an entrepreneur / small business owner. All sorts of different things. And we just had a guest on. It was actually a fascinating show about the art of storytelling and how important that is, and how, the different aspects of your business that you don't really think of, that having a strong skill set in storytelling is important. So different things like that. Of course, your normal things, marketing, cash flow, budgeting, things like that. But and we try to cover things in a fun way, so it's not just when I first started they talked me into starting this show, Mr. Biz Radio. It's like, I'm like, I would rather watch paint dry than hear someone talk about, boring business topics, all the time. And so, trying to make it a funner show and have some humor in there and some comedy, and we have some normal features we have to kind of jazz it up. And but yeah, we technically release one half-hour show every week, every Friday. Again, follow me on social media, and you can check those out. They're all free, of course. And it's also on an internet radio network on DCN. So it's on for 2.5 hours a day, actually during East Coast drive time. So from 4 to 6:30, you get a 2.5 hour dose of Mr. Biz Radio, whether you like it or not, on DCN. So, you can definitely go out there and check that out as well, and see if hopefully we cover some topics that'll be good and good information and good insights for some of your listeners.
Awesome. Well, definitely thanks for sharing that. And I will definitely make sure to put all of Ken's social links in the show notes, so you can connect with him on all of his social channels as well. So listen, Ken, I really, really appreciate your time today. I thank you so much for being on as a guest and sharing your story, your insights, and your knowledge to the listeners.
Yeah, Jordan, I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. What an awesome episode with Ken, Mr. Biz Wentworth. It's so awesome to see all the things that he's doing now, helping early stage entrepreneurs really get their business going. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did enjoy it, make sure to subscribe and tell all your friends about it. I really, really appreciate all the support, and I cannot wait to share the next episode with you soon.